Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to the Business Innovators Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Brown. When I first met today's guest, maybe 8 or 9 years ago now, at a Veterans Entrepreneur workshop that we were both invited to participate in, I remember understanding very quickly that he was one of the sharper people in the room. And it's really, in the years since, been a treat to watch him continue to grow into an incredible entrepreneur and a leader. And that's not to say that he wasn't already excelling in both of those areas, 9 years ago. In fact, Larry has been a leader and a leader of warriors for many more years than I've known him. Before founding Sealed Security, Inc., where he provided security-based leadership guidance to international architecture firms, high-value individuals, and mega brands like Walt Disney, SONY, and Fox. Before founding Sealed Mindset, where he specialized in leadership development, corporate contingency planning, and team performance. Before he founded his current venture, SEAL Team Leaders, where he helps businesses and business owners shift their leadership and team performance to create superhuman results. Long before he did all that, and you may have picked up on the pattern already, Larry Yatch served our country in the U.S. Navy, and more specifically, as a U.S. Navy SEAL. And that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, qualifies him to speak at length on building world-class teams and world-class leaders. Larry, welcome to the show.
Rick, I have to say, I've been on a whole bunch of podcasts, but I have never had an introduction like that. That is amazing.
That's all you, dude. You earned it, man. Appreciate, first of all, thanks for your service. Appreciate your service to the country and even stepping up into, filling those boots of Navy SEAL. Everybody knows the reputation of the Navy SEALs, and it's a very, very, very small percentage of human beings on this planet that can do something like that. So thanks very much for everything that you've done. And I would like, in fact, to kind of share a little bit more, have you share a little bit more about your military background. I wonder if you remember kind of that moment when you decided to become a Navy SEAL.
Oh, yeah. And oddly enough, it was at a relatively young age, especially, I'm in my 40s now. So I was in the SEALs from 1998 to 2008. And when I first decided to be a SEAL was in 7th grade. So it would have been in the late 80s. I mean, it was really before anyone really even knew what a Navy SEAL was. And I had gotten interested in it based on a friend that got me a sweatshirt that said Navy SEALs on it. And with the sweatshirt, he got it solely because it said Navy and had a cool logo. Like, had no idea what a Navy SEAL was. And I went straight to the library and found a book called The Men with Green Faces, which was a Vietnam era SEAL book. And by the end of the book, I was convinced I needed to be a Navy SEAL. I was anything but SEAL material. I was a little skinny, dorky kid that was not good at any sports growing up in the city in Pittsburgh that got picked on a regular basis. So not exactly what you would have banked on to get through that program.
What is it you think that resonated with you at such a young age?
Well, I really think I did grow up in the city in Pittsburgh, and I was a little dorky kid, little skinny dorky kid that wasn't good at any sports with a ball or a team. And growing up in Pittsburgh, that's a recipe for disaster. And so I was bullied and picked on quite badly all the way through middle school. And ultimately, I think that was what drove it more than anything else, was one, being able to prove to myself that everything all those kids said wasn't true about being weak and not being able to defend myself. And then on the other side of it, be able to hunt bullies down. I mean, ultimately, that's what SEALs do. Like, we get to hunt some of the worst bullies in the world. And that seemed like a hell of a good idea, especially if I got to jump out of planes and blow things up. All of those things seemed to line up really well. But the path to getting to that was obviously extremely difficult.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. That training is not easy, and not everybody gets through it.
No, not at all. And I chose an even harder route by deciding to go to the Naval Academy. So went to Annapolis, got into that, which was a challenge in and of itself. There's over 12,000 people that applied to my class, and only 1,200 of us started. And then from there, it had to be weeded down to just 15 guys from the Naval Academy got to go to SEAL training. So we would have said, I would imagine about 200 or so would have said they wanted to be a Navy SEAL freshman year. And by the time we got to be a senior, that was down to 54. And those 54 competed. We had a 3-month process we had to go through, and only 15 of us got a chance to even go to SEAL training. And that was just the beginning of the race. Like,
I was
that's
going to say,
not the hard part.
How many of those completed?
Well, it's interesting. The statistics. So in my class, at my BUDS class, my SEAL training class, at least the basic training is 6 months long. We started with 135, and that's both officers and enlisted. We had 15 officers, and the rest were enlisted sailors. And 6 months later, we graduated 11 of those 135. So about 90% attrition. What's interesting is because of the competitive process from the Naval Academy, we had over 90% of those 15. I think we lost one person to injury and one person to a administrative issue. Like, it wasn't even a performance issue. So all of 13 out of the 15 made it through, which speaks a lot to how hard it was just to get to SEAL training from the Naval Academy.
That's incredible. And so here you are today in 2019. You've founded and run several successful businesses as an entrepreneur. And like I say, you and I met about 8-9 years ago and have done a little bit of work together. But tell us a little bit about what you're doing today with SEAL Team Leaders.
Yeah, I've run this, like you said in the introduction, ran a series of 3 different companies up to this one, and they were all training companies of one sort or another. So we've been in training everything from very technical stuff like technical surveillance and intelligence work that we both created products, but more importantly, trained people on the use of those products. And then into personal safety and self-defense, where we ran a training company teaching individuals how to stay safe in the world, both through situational awareness all the way through shooting and fighting. Started a school company where we created curriculum for anti-bullying and leadership development in middle schools and high schools. And when we got to the end of it, the last piece of it was in corporate performance. Oddly enough, the parents that saw the homework that their 5th graders were bringing home in our leadership development courses started calling me saying that just reading that curriculum, their executive teams did not communicate as well as 5th graders and that they needed our help. And looking through all those pieces, the common thing was behavior change, right? When it came to surveillance and intelligence, your behavior was what enabled you to both get the information as well as create the relationships. When it came to self-defense, being able to change the way that you see the world and act in it, which again is behavior, is what enabled you to be safe. What we were doing in the classrooms was not only changing the behavior of the students, but of the teachers that were running the classrooms. And so we saw that the key to performance was behavior. And what we're doing now is being able to systematically change behavior in organizations to optimize performance and, more importantly, optimize leadership.
So leadership is a really key term here for what it is you do. What's your definition of leadership, or even a leader?
So for me, it's very specific. Leadership is creating an environment where others make the right choices. Now, how do you determine if something's right or wrong? Is it's towards the desired end state we want to achieve, and it's moral, ethical, and legal. But again, the key piece of that definition is creating an environment where others make the right choices. And the key piece to that is leadership is in essence behavior change, right? A leader influences the behavior of those around them towards the end result. And understanding how to do that in a systematic manner enables anyone to lead. And that was a big eye-opening experience for me going to the Naval Academy, is that we all showed up 18 years old, not knowing how to lead anything. By the time we graduated, they had systematically created leaders. And going into the SEAL program, I had a similar experience around individual performance, right? Everyone showed different levels. And by the end of the 2.5 years of training, we were a highly functioning team. And that as well can be done in a very systematic manner.
Do you think leadership is situational? Should it be situational? Or is it a constant? Does that make sense even?
Yeah, completely. So what I'm hearing you say is, are you always a leader or not?
Yeah.
Or is it situational? And the answer to that for me is definitely not all the time, right? It is 100% situational, especially when you're talking about leadership versus following. Whoever makes the best choices in the moment becomes the leader, right? Whoever is in the most effective action becomes the leader in most environments. Now, where most organizations get it wrong is they confuse the words manager and leader. And there's a big difference between the two. And the managers or management is based on positional authority. You have a title, you have management responsibilities. That doesn't necessitate that you lead. And ultimately, managers that lead are not being very effective, which is a huge mindset shift. Most people think when they get into an organization, the intent is to be the big leader at the top of the organization. But ultimately, if the most senior people in organizations have to lead, they're not doing their job, which is to create leaders underneath them, right? A manager's job is not to lead. A manager's job is to create, enable, and support leaders. And that alone was the biggest distinction that enabled SEAL teams to operate at such a high level. My job as an officer in the team was not to lead my men. My job as an officer in the team was to manage the environment so my men could lead and be effective on the battlefield. And that alone changes organizations, that shift in mindset.
Yeah, there's a big difference there. And it's interesting that in the military environment, and I think you probably really experienced this within the SEAL teams, in that there's, of course, a rank structure. And where most people, I guess, would look at that and say, well, the senior ranking is the leader. But especially in a team like you experienced, that leadership comes from kind of all levels. And you, as a SEAL team officer, could be taking orders, for lack of a better term, from an enlisted soldier who is, below you in rank.
I actually should be, right? If I'm doing my job right, I should be following the leaders that I've created on my team. My job as an officer was to manage, not to lead. And that's a huge distinction, right? My job as a officer, as a manager, right, is to create a clear picture as to what future I want my men to create on the battlefield, to make sure they have all the resources they need, and to make sure that if they do something wrong or make a mistake, everyone stays safe. Like, that's it. Once I do that, they lead and I follow. Right. And when you think about it, coming into a team as a junior officer, I'm probably the least skilled, the weakest, and definitely the least experienced. And to think that I'm going to come in and lead a guy that's been doing this job for 10, 15 years is ludicrous. My job is to create the environment where he can be effective and he can make all the right choices and follow him because he's got all the experience. On top of that, my job is to create an environment where everyone on the team is empowered to lead when they can make more effective choices. When a manager can create an environment where there's a team of leaders and everyone is expected to lead and everyone switches back and forth between leading and following depending on the time and situation, you have an extremely high functioning team. And you can do the impossible, which is what we do. And it's also like that model is not what's in the corporate world. Like, that's why we have such a huge impact on organizations, because the opposite model is in effect, right? Where I'm the manager, I have the title, I have the rank, if you will, and it's my job to tell you what to do. And it's your job to ask me for direction all the time, right? And that is very limiting in organizations, right? That's where you have one leader at the top and you have a bunch of followers underneath. And that is slow, ineffective, doesn't deal with change well.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of ask you that question, this definition that you've provided of leaders and leadership. Does that change from a military environment to a business environment?
What it does is it changes based on the functional level of a team. And this is, again, another way, a very different way to look at it. The higher functioning your team, the more empowered they can be. The lower functioning your team, the more controlled they have to be. And where many organizations get it wrong is where they have a low functioning team that they're trying to empower with a bunch of leadership, which never works. Or you have a high functioning team that you're trying to control what they do. That doesn't work. Like imagine if I went in as a junior officer into a SEAL team that was already high functioning, worked really well together for years, and I start dictating what they do all the time. It's not going to last very long. It's not going to be very effective. Or if you go into a low functioning team, a team is anytime you've got two people that have to coordinate action to create a different future. So all of a sudden, when you use that definition for team, we're on teams all over the place, right? A prisoner and prisoner guard, it's a dysfunctional, low functioning team, but it's still a team, right? They have to coordinate action on a daily basis. And if you were to go and try and empower a maximum security prisoner to just stay in his cell and be good, and like, it's not going to work, right?
Good luck with
you
that.
have to control them, right? Because it's a low functioning team. And the job of a manager is not to manage or lead or to control or influence. It's mostly to identify how high functioning is my team and where can I meet them with my leadership between control or influence, control or empowerment, depending on their behavior. And not so much their behavior, but their performance.
Yeah. Interesting. So define for us what an ideal client looks like for you.
So what we found is that all businesses hit certain revenue plateaus in growth. And what blew me away, because I've gotten to work in $1 billion high-tech companies, $100,000 a year, independent kind of construction type company where they're running one small group, and everything in between, from pharmaceuticals to grocery distribution. And what I found is every company hits the same revenue plateaus. And those plateaus, there's one at $1 million, there's one at 3 to 4, there's one at 8 to 12, there's one at 30 to 40, there's one at 50, 100, 250, 500 billion. Those revenue plateaus come because the behaviors that got you to that point are the same ones that keep you from going past it. Like, for example, an individual working really hard with a couple followers can get to $1 million. That individual can't get past $1 million until they start passing some of the authority and getting others to perform at a high level. So now at that point, you have 3 to 4 people working really hard independently. You can get to 3 to 4 million, then you're stuck. Now to get past 3 to 4, you have to be able to teach those 3 to 4 people how to manage a couple people underneath them. That gets you to 8 to 12. Once you get stuck at 8 to 12, it's because now we're relying on individuals to manage a bunch of individuals. We have to make it so that there's process and structure that enable the teams to work without the one key person. And that gets you to 30 to 40. So for us, if you've been stuck at a revenue plateau, any one of these, because that's a behavior issue, and what we're experts at is behavior change, both as individuals, as a CEO, or as a organization with multiple managers underneath.
And this is really key, what you're saying here. We talk about this a lot on this program about as a leader in your organization, as a business owner, an entrepreneur, you have to learn to kind of let go of certain things. And in other words, don't try to do it all yourself, which is an issue that a lot of people run into. You have an idea, you have a concept, you want to implement it, you know exactly how you want it to be done. And a lot of people, yours truly included, have trouble letting go of certain things. And that, I think that stymies a lot of young, would-be great businesses from growing. Is that fair to say?
Well, and it's not your fault. Like, yes, and it's not your fault. And I think that's a really key point. You're making the best choices you can based on your perception of your world right now. And you can't be expected to make different decisions until you change your perception of your world. And the only way to do that is to learn, right? You have to learn. If you could make a better choice, you would. So if you find yourself stuck, it's because you don't know something, right? Like, that's universal. And your behavior is always in alignment with your perception of your environment. So once you change your perception of your environment, your behavior changes. You change your behavior, you change your actions, actions change your environment. And that cycle is what we use and we teach to be able to modify behavior. And so if you find yourself, and it gets to, like, I love finding companies that are really frustrated, because to get from zero or a couple 100,000 a year to $1 million, like, usually happens pretty quick. Like, once you get over a couple 100,000 a year, like, oh, now we're at $1 million or 1.5, and then we're stuck. Once you get past that, now we're at 3 to 4, and now we're stuck. So we love finding companies that had this big growth, and then they got stuck at a certain revenue point and they haven't been able to move past it, because we know what you're doing wrong, right? There's a key set of behaviors that you have to change to be able to go to the next level. And that can be done very systematically, which is the beauty of it. And ultimately, to get to the point where you're at the $30 million mark, 50, 100, 200, you have to have a really structured system of empowered leadership in the organization, or you're going to work your butt off. And that's where, I hate seeing guys that their organizations have gotten bigger than their ability to lead them, which means they're always overworked. So if you worked and burnt out, that's because you don't have the help you need. You don't have the help you need because you're not leading people to the point of being able to support you, right? And ultimately, you're not managing enough leaders in your organization. And that's what we do. For companies over 3 to 4 million a year, we love when the CEO outsources the leadership development to us. So they give us their key leaders, we put them through programs and send them back. If you got a mediocre manager that's not really supporting you the way you need, give them to us, and we send them back as kick-ass leaders that completely support you in the way that you need. If you're under 3-4 million a year, you're the person that needs to learn how to manage and create high functioning teams, because you're still at a point of being direct hands-on with those people. So it's like those two people. If you're at the point where you're still having to manage people and you're overworked, it's because you don't have the support you need. You got to learn how to create that. If you've got managers that just aren't performing, give them to us and we can create amazing leaders out of them.
That's pretty powerful stuff that you just put out there. And I think what I'm also hearing you say is that with what you do, and even just in a definition of leadership, I don't think this really changes. Let me put it this way. For a young entrepreneur, solopreneur, somebody just getting started with their business, these same principles apply, right?
Oh, completely. What's amazing is they're fundamental, right? When you look at it, a leader's job is to take effect. Well, let me put it to you in 3 different ways. You've got followers, leaders, and managers. And you have to understand the key role of followers, leaders, and managers to be able to understand how they work together. The key role of a follower is to take effective action, right? When we think about it, the people, the hardcore kick-ass followers you want in an organization are people that are constantly taking effective action. The primary role of a leader is to evoke effective action in others. And the primary role of a manager is to create, enable, and support leaders. Now, most organizations aren't set up that way, right? Most organizations are set up in a way where people take kind of decent action. You've got 1, maybe 2 people in the whole place that are able to evoke action in anyone, and no one's creating leaders. Well, yeah, no wonder you got mediocre performance. And when you look at a SEAL team, we all are followers, right? We all take effective action, from the most senior guy who's on the boat tying the knots, or doing the same thing that the most junior guy is, right? Taking effective action. Everyone's expected to lead, to evoke effective action when necessary. And the guys with rank, the LPOs, the chiefs, and the officers, their job is to create leaders solely, like to make sure that everyone else has clear direction, all the resources they need, and they're safe. That enables a high functioning team. And most organizations don't, just on that basic fundamental level. And what I love about the way have I used any big words or complicated concepts? No, this is, simple words. And I like to say elegant as opposed to simple. There's nothing simple about what I'm talking about. It's just packaged in a very easy way. And what's neat is when Imagine in an organization, if you ask someone, what's the key role of a follower? And they're like, to take effective action. You ask someone else, what's the key role of a leader? Is to evoke action in others. What's the key role of a manager? Is to create leaders. If everyone said that, the organization just in that is going to be more effective in change.
Just having a complete understanding of that.
Shared understanding. Because go to any organization, right, and ask that, what's the definition of a follower? What's the main role of a follower? People look at you with a blank stare. That no two people will answer that question the same way. No wonder your teams don't work well.
So your recommendation would be, if we could kind of give this one piece of recommendation to a young business owner who is struggling to build the leaders, struggling to build their business to the next level.
I would say, so I don't care if you don't run a business. If you have a family, it's the same thing. Someone's got to follow in a family, someone's got to lead, and someone's got to manage. And those roles constantly switch, especially on teams without titles. So this is just as important in a spousal relationship. Just when my wife and I started being careful about who's managing a project, who's leading, who's following, we stopped arguing a lot. Like on a vacation, okay, your job is to manage this vacation. You're leading with a childcare. I'm leading on where we stay, how we get there. Like that alone, that's a 2-minute conversation changes how you experience a vacation. So I don't care. If you run a business, you're in the middle of a business, you have a family, it makes no difference. Kids, same thing. So everyone out there, what I would say, take out a piece of paper, write this down. Write down follower, leader, and manager on it. Under follower, write followers take effective action. Under leaders, write leaders evoke effective action in others. Under managers, write managers create, enable, and support leaders. If you write that down, put it on the wall, and every time you interact with someone, identify which role am I in, you're going to perform higher as an individual. If you have to manage other people, if everyone in your organization can just say those words, right? When you ask them in the hallway, what's a leader do? A leader evokes effective action in others. Your organizational shift.
Great advice. I appreciate that. I wonder if there's somebody in your background who still lives inside your head somewhere, somebody that had some impact on you and kind of led you to where you are now. Anybody like that for you?
Quite a few. One that comes to my mind right off the bat is my dad, for sure. And what I love about how he raised me is he raised me not by telling me what to think, but teaching me how to think was the big one. The other one, Toby Hecht, took a very advanced business course. It was equivalent to an MBA. And what he taught me was the power of language and precision in language. That if you can't be precise in language, you can't coordinate action well with others. Like I imagine you may have in the past asked other people, what's your definition of leadership? And people give this long rambling thing. I gave you exactly, here's 5 words. This is what leadership is. That ability to be precise with language has served me so well, because when you're precise with language, you can listen to what other people are saying more effectively. And you'd be amazed at how careless people are with their language, right? Where they say leader when they mean manager, or manager when they mean leader. Where they'll say a word that they don't actually even have a good understanding of, right? That ability as human beings, our ability to coordinate action is our most important thing, right? What enables us to be successful is our ability to coordinate action with others. And our biggest, easiest, most important tool for coordinating action with others is language. So if you want to be successful in life, you have to be able to coordinate action with others. And if you have to coordinate action with others, you have to be good and precise with your language. Golden,
dude. I love it. Who would you identify today as a great leader? Somebody that we would all recognize.
One of the ones I always say, which is often controversial, is Genghis Khan is is a very impressive leader. You might not agree with his tactics, but oh my God, what he was able to accomplish was absolutely staggering.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit here. You familiar with Marcel Proust, the Proust questionnaire?
No.
Okay, so Marcel Proust was a French writer back in the early 1900s, and he believed that in answering a series of questions that he came up with, that an individual reveals his or her true nature.
Nice.
I think we get a pretty good idea of your true nature, but these are just
weak
kind of fun
and scared, and
but these are just kind of fun and harmless questions. So I'd like to run a couple of these by you if you don't mind. They're pretty harmless and just answer with first thing that comes to mind.
Okay? This is dangerous because there's some twisted stuff up here in this brain.
This could all be edited out. That's the part. All right. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Idea of perfect happiness? Mm-hmm. Being able to act completely in alignment with your true self, which then produces not only flow, but ease.
Nice. What is your greatest fear?
My greatest fear? My wife. Say that, yeah.
She's not in the room, is she?
No, that's what. Notice I looked over the shoulder. Yeah, actually, and I say that not in the traditional sense, but in losing her. I mean, she's just so. She saved my life when I was in the hospital as a SEAL, and when the surgeon came in and said my SEAL career was over, and I had. My entire purpose for life was taken away. If it wasn't for her identifying my ability to teach, distill things down and continue to change, I don't know if I would have made it. Between that, and then she stuck with me through entrepreneurship, and that's been a hell of a painful ride, and 10 surgeries and post-traumatic stress, all that stuff. So, I'd say it's losing her. Yeah, that would be it.
Behind every great man, right?
Yeah.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Greatest single achievement?
Yeah.
I would, oddly enough, I've been on, for the last 3 years, I've been on a path of personal development and healing, and being able to get, it started being bullied when I was in second grade, and emotional disconnection I learned in second grade, and it was supported through middle school and high school. And then when I got to the Naval Academy, I mean, being yelled at didn't bother me. And then going into the SEALs, I was rewarded for being completely emotionally and physically disconnected. And going into combat and war, I mean, I operated better than any of my peers because I didn't feel fear. I mean, because I couldn't feel my body or my emotions. And so for the last 3 years, I've been fighting. I lived in my head, full mental. I didn't feel my body because I was in pain all the time. I didn't feel any emotions. I had no connection to my energy because I just told my body what to do. And so over the last 3 years, being able to reconnect to having a connection to my mind, my heart, my energy, and my body it's been a fight. I mean, it's been a nasty, nasty fight. And I'm most proud of being able to get back healed from my experiences and all that stuff, and especially for, my 5-year-old and 3-year-old, being able to have the relationship I have now with them versus even 3 years ago. So oddly enough, that'd be it. Personal development, I guess you could say.
That's awesome, dude. Awesome.
Yeah.
What do you most value in your friends?
Adventure, sense of adventure. I love adventures. I mean, I love experiencing anything in life.
You're a thrill seeker?
Oh, not even just thrill, just experience. I'm an experience seeker, and a lot of experiences I seek are thrilling, but I think it's more about the experience than the thrill. And so those that want to experience stuff, like experience life and go out and enjoy those big things, I really value that.
Okay. What is your greatest regret?
I would say along the same lines of living what I'm 43 now. So living 37 years of my life completely emotionally and physically disconnected. I mean, that's a long time of, missing out on a whole lot of really cool things that can be, that I just didn't get to experience. Connection with people, connection with my wife, connection with my boys. I wish I would have been able to have the journey I've done over the last couple of years, three years. I wish I would have done that years ago. I just didn't know, right? I don't know about you. We have very different military experiences with what we did, but they didn't have a lot of support for us.
No, suck it up and drive on, right?
Yeah, exactly. Rub some dirt in it and keep going. And then, getting back, I mean, you might get diagnosed with stuff and they try and offer some help. They just didn't know what to do. And
right.
it's been getting better. And especially with, especially over the last couple of years, more developments with some cutting edge stuff has been able to really provide, I think, the opportunity for a lot of good healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier as well, and I think there's a big piece of it, those that we have at our back supporting us at home and the military spouse. And I think there's not enough that is talked about with the support that they provide and the sacrifices that they make. So, hats off to military spouses and family members all over the place because they endure a lot.
I agree. I always say when someone thanks me for my service, like I was being selfish. I almost feel guilty when someone says that. Like all I'd ever wanted to do since I was in third grade was be in the military, and since seventh grade be a SEAL. And then I got to be a SEAL and go to war, which is always a SEAL. Like I was being selfish every day I was a SEAL, and it was my dream, right? I was living my dream, but that's also my family's nightmare, right? Like going off to war and not knowing if I'm going to come home. That I always think, instead of thanking me for my service, thank my family for their service, because their service was not volunteered. All
right. Hey, Larry, this is great. Thanks for playing along. I think Proust would definitely approve.
So what's my character?
So that's still, we got to analyze that one a little bit.
Good. Like, come back. I'll be interested to hear what you had to say.
Hey, how can our listeners learn more about you and working with SEAL team leaders?
We've done this for podcasts because we found, people will hear things on this that they've never heard before. And we usually just get a touch into the key things. So we put together a free video training series. So it's a series of 4 videos delivered over 4 days. They're about 20 minutes each. And if something really triggered you when you heard those distinctions around lead, manage, and follow, or the necessity of aligning your leadership culture with your team functional level, or you're stuck in a place where you're not being supported by your team the way you want to, if that's you, this video training series is awesome. It's pure good content. There's no selling in it. And so within that, register, watch the videos. And what we also included is a free call with someone on our team. So if you get to the end of it and you need help implementing with your team, you can set up a free call with one of our coaches. So they can get that at sealteamleaders.com /leaders.
Awesome. Larry Yatch, U.S. Navy SEAL, leadership and behavior change expert at SEAL Team Leaders. Larry, thanks so much for joining me here today, man. This has been great.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Business Innovators Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Brown. Until next time, keep innovating.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.